watch. And the one thing I'll say is they kept saying about what I said right after the insurrection. Because I think it was an insurrection caused by Nancy Pelosi.
Donald Trump might actually collect a win in court. I know it's hard to keep track of, but this time it's over the Colorado ballot ban that made its way to the Supreme Court, where both conservative and liberal justices seem to be leaning in his favor. And since he's talking about January 6th again, it was time to change the narrative for the 26th time, finally calling the events an insurrection, of course, caused by Nancy Pelosi. Using that term insurrection is something he and his attorneys have avoided since the beginning.
What if we narrowed it to say prevent the peaceful transfer of power of the United States government? Would that be an insurrection?
To prevent the peaceful transfer? I don't think so, and I'm not sure, Your Honor. Look, I mean, if you look at historically in the context of how insurrection was used, I mean, it has to be for a substantial duration, not 3 hours. There has to be some geographical scope. There has to be a goal of nullifying all governmental authority in an area.
In Webster's Third New International Dictionary defines it as an act or instance of revolting against civil authority or against an established government. So you've added a whole lot of conditions there. I'm not sure where it came from.
Okay, but I think also if you look at sort of the historical record. Now you're going to tell me, Mr. Gesser, you're making it up. And I'm going to say, well, so did the judge. And I'll say, we're all sort of making it up at the end of the day.
Admissions of throwing things against the wall and seeing if they stick was on full display there. What else can he say when the guy he's working for does the same thing?
Well, I can say presidential immunity, which we'll be talking about because that will be upcoming, is very, very important for a president to have. If a president doesn't have immunity, he really doesn't have a presidency. He can be told to do things that he would never do. He can do really bad things for our country. Presidential immunity is imperative. It's going to be very, very important. And I'd rather talk about that next week. But there is nothing more important to a presidency than immunity, because they have to be free to make decisions without saying, oh, if I do this or if I do that, as soon as I get out of office, we're going to be indicted. We're going to have trouble. And the other party will do that. I think we've seen that. They've done that. There's some very bad people.
We've all heard this line of thinking from Trump before, but now that he feels he's got the court on his side when it comes to the ballot case, he's reiterating the same talking points to the public about this one. In fact, it was time to go even further with perceived dangers of not allowing him to be above the law.
And if you don't have immunity, you can be blackmailed. You can be, as a president, they'll say, if you don't do this, this, and this, we're going to indict you as soon as you leave office. You cannot allow a president to be out there without immunity. They don't have immunity. You don't have a presidency. You lose all, you lose all form of free thought and good thought. And you probably weaken the presidency to a point that it was never supposed to be weakened. It would be a very bad thing for our country. We'll be talking about immunity in the coming weeks.
It's looking a lot like desperation repackaged as an argument. It's the same reason that they tried to call January 6th something that was first carried out by Antifa, then BLM, then suddenly it was peaceful MAGA protesters. Some Republicans like Kevin McCarthy and Mitch McConnell came out strong against Trump and his part in it at first, before they then fell back into line. All of the ever-shifting narratives were presented to avoid both legal and political consequences for Trump. So now that he's willing to call January 6th an insurrection now for the sake of placing it on the shoulders of Democrats, it's also time to label them accordingly, no matter how little sense that makes.
The American people are smart. They know that the weaponized attacks of radical far-left prosecutors and Joe Biden's Department of Justice against President Donald Trump are nothing more than a targeted political witch hunt used to further their own extreme far-left political agenda and hijack the will of the American people come Election Day. As President Donald Trump continues to dominate in the polls, extreme Democrats will stop at nothing in attempt to prevent President Donald Trump from returning to the White House, and the Democrats are shredding the Constitution in the process. Joe Biden claims that democracy is on the ballot, yet the American people know that it is Joe Biden and Democrats who are openly attacking democracy.